The Africa Hub is basically to bring people who have an interest in Africa, people who have their heart in Africa one way or the other, both to do business but also to do culture. We are calling it collaborating with dignity. So to bring dignity into the ways in which we interact between Swedish companies, Swedish people, and African companies and African people. That's in short about Africa Hub.
Applause to Stanley that made this day happen and pull all of this together and all the different parties. So thank you so much, Stanley. Excellencies, Minister, dear friends, my name is Amir Sajadi and I'm managing partner at Impact Hub Stockholm. And on behalf of Impact Hub Stockholm and our sister hubs all around the world, we are very happy to welcome you, and it's a privilege to open this day for you. Impact Hub is the world's largest organization for innovation, entrepreneurship, and sustainable business. Over 130 hubs in more than 60 countries, locally rooted and globally connected, united by one shared mission: to build a just and sustainable world where business serves people and the planet. Every year, we run more than 150 programs and projects, every single one of them spanning multiple countries and regions around the world. And there is one thing we are especially proud of to share with you today. Africa is the fastest growing region in our entire global organization. We have today 17 offices across the continent and growing. I promised Stanley not to list all of them. I really wanted to. And just this year, we're establishing 4 new offices around in Africa and entering 2 new markets in Angola and South Africa. But Impact Hubs are not just offices. We are local nodes run by people who know their markets in and out. My colleagues working in our African hubs are consultants, experts with deep knowledge and strong connection to the local ecosystem. And they are ready to help anyone serious about doing business in the continent. Our presence in 17 markets with over 120 local experts in Africa is exactly what makes our next step here in Impact Hub Stockholm possible. Because here in Stockholm, we also stand ready to welcome African companies, entrepreneurs, and organizations looking to establish themselves here in Sweden and the Nordics. And this is something we do well. And we have done this over the last few years, educating business leaders from all around the world in sustainability, ecosystem development, and business, and introduction to the Swedish markets. So we have a strong network in Africa, we have a base here in the Nordics, and we have people on both sides. And now we are launching a new program this year that we are very happy to share here with you today. We call it Market Discovery. It's a practical bridge between Nordic ambition and African opportunity, built on the experts who are already there on both sides. We will share more about this during the coming weeks and months, but if you are interested, you're very welcome to approach me and my colleagues at Impact Hub Stockholm. And I just want to finish to say that today is a little bit bigger than a single activity or initiative. Today is about conversations we're about to have built on trust, the bold partnerships that we will start in this room, and the collaboration and long-term friendship we will build between Africa and the Nordics. Thank you so much for you being here, and it's a great honor for us to host you.
Thank you, Amir. Now we will hear from our ambassador, the Dean of the African ambassadors. She is ambassador for Rwanda, Ambassador Diane. And those of you who know Ambassador Diane, you will know that you don't say no to her. She is one of the people that actually came with the idea that we should create an Africa Hub. So, Ambassador Diane.
Thank you so much. Honorable Minister, distinguished guests, you can't say no to me as a dean, especially that I'm surrounded by 2 strong deputy deans, the ambassador of Zimbabwe and the ambassador of Morocco, and a group of 21 very dedicated African ambassadors. All these companies that you see gathered here, and SMEs, private sector from Sweden, but also companies that came all the way from Africa. I want to take this opportunity to deeply thank everyone who took his time to come and join us, especially those who traveled a long distance. I want also to recognize the presence of Madam Allen Sophia Assimi, the Deputy CEO for Trademark Africa. She traveled all the way from Nairobi. Please stand up for recognition. Thank you for joining us. And I want also to take this moment to thank the technical committee that have pulled all these together. I'm sure they are in this room. Please stand up for recognition. Technical committee, whoever is a member of the technical committee from different embassies. Where are you guys? They're behind and outside. Okay. Thank you so much. You've worked days and nights to get this done. So I don't have a long speech. We don't like long speeches in Africa. Mine is just to thank you all and to welcome you to this seminar and to wish you fruitful deliberations. But also I want to emphasize on the privilege we have to be ambassadors resident here in Sweden. We are a group of 22, and I think Sweden counts the largest number of missions across the Nordics. It's a privilege and it is a strength. And we know the policy here. Sweden has been very strict and strong about moving from aid to trade. We share this vision. And Africa offers a lot of opportunities. From the mining sector, from tourism. Look at the weather in Africa. Where would you want to go for tourism if it's not to Africa? Coffee, IT sector, we have young, talented IT experts in Africa. And Honorable Minister, I know the problems you have about asylum seekers. If we build a strong collaboration around trade, if we strengthen skills through technology, through research and education, we can have a strong workforce from Africa coming to contribute to Sweden's development and less asylum seekers. And trade would be made possible. This morning we had an interesting discussion with the Deputy CEO for Trademark Africa. We were asking ourselves which partner they could have to push this agenda, to really put into action the policy, the trade policy between Africa and Sweden. And I think today I found you a partner. I think Impact Hub is a good partner. He said it very well. And we are preparing for the Africa Nordic Foreign Affairs Ministers meeting in November in Norway. It was supposed to be hosted by Sweden, but it will come to Sweden. So by the time we go to Norway for this very important meeting, we agreed to build on the momentum created in Zimbabwe when Zimbabwe hosted this very important meeting for foreign affairs ministers. We are going to build on this momentum and build on the current momentum with this seminar. And within our group of 22 heads of missions, we're going to prepare something good that will really unlock the barriers, because there are barriers to trade with Sweden or to trade with the Nordics, but there are also barriers to trade among ourselves as Africans. Let's not put the blame on others. So we are here to discuss, to exchange ideas, to learn from each other, but also to celebrate Africa Day. So I wish you a very pleasant celebration, and I thank again the technical committee and my colleagues, ambassadors, for the time and the energy you've put into this. We have our sister from Tanzania. She's very new. Stand up from the We have the ambassador of Namibia. She's new also. And His Excellency Ambassador of Mozambique. Ambassador of Egypt, she's quite new but not new. Please stand up for her. She's not new. Thank you so much. Wish you very fruitful discussions. Thank you.
I just want to start off saying that by 2050, there's going to be about 1/4 of all the workforce in the world is going to be from Africa. And that is a number that, you know, most people talk about future growth and such, right? But in reality, what is important to understand that the growth that we talk about future is already present and already here. And across Africa, companies are building, investing, and scaling, and setting up a lot of businesses. And you know, in Africa Hub, you see that growth. I would assume with your expansion, it's very good to see. But when it comes to the opportunities, they are here now. They're not here in the future only. That is a very important thing to talk about. And we clearly see this when we speak to Swedish companies on a daily basis. Swedish companies that are engaged in Africa and have been engaged with Africa for a long time. And of course, you have to be humble saying that different markets will have different conditions, of course. And talking about Africa is a big continent, but that's the fact. But one thing that is very consistent is that Africa is not just the story of potential, it actually is potential right now. And it's all about the momentum that feeds. And the momentum is not only from one side, it goes around. So there's also a lot of incoming. So Nordic companies see a lot of this engagement from Swedish companies and Nordic companies happening as well. You know, engagements on partner level and finding that new technologies can help and build Africa for the future. So we at Business Sweden really see this trajectory and believe it's going to happen. And we have a mandate from the Swedish government to support Swedish companies to grow internationally, and also to help international companies to invest in Sweden, to find opportunities and partners. In Africa, we have not 13 places, but we have 4. South Africa, in Kenya, and Nigeria, and Morocco, where we have local offices to drive and support in the region. And we engage not only in the physical place we are. And that is very critical because you have to do business locally. And being local builds that long-term trust that we have and the relationship that is very, very needed. So that is also why this day matters, because Africa Day is not just a meeting point, it's really a platform for collaboration, and we are really happy to be part of this. So what I see here, the embassies here present today are very important for Swedish companies to engage. You are the bridge to the local market, you know the local customs, and you can guide companies together with us, of course, and that is very critical. But also all of you that are companies here, entrepreneurs, investors and such, you see this, you work beyond borders on a daily basis, and you see both sides of the table. So that's increasingly important to build this relationship. We can also see that there is a big foundation to stand on, because Swedish companies, and as you said Nordic, but Swedish companies have a long history in Africa. I mean, decades in industries, as been mentioned, telecommunications, energy, power build-ups, healthcare, and of course transportation are key segments for Swedish companies. But there's also a new wave of small and mid-sized companies coming out, builders of ecosystems and hubs, like Africa Hub and others, who really builds up, capture this capital and human and ideas into new sorts of partnerships. So, on a personal level, I would like to talk about that. I'm fairly new to this role. I started off 3 months ago, roughly. It's a very interesting role I had. I have been in Business Sweden for a long time, but in Asia mainly. And then I've been outside working for a Swedish tech company for the last few years. And coming back is perfect, the right moment, because Africa is now on everyone's lips, and we see higher expectations than ever on what we're going to do. So I just want to say, and for this opening, that I really hope today will be a very good ground for first collaborations and actions, that we can start and build together. So thank you so much for hosting us today, and thanks Ambassador Diana for really pulling this off. Thank you so much.
We will have our first keynote address now, and our keynote address is coming from Ms. Allen from Trademarks Africa.
So I come from Trademark Africa, and I'll speak to you about the current context and what it means for Africa trade. But I think what you're all waiting to hear is where are the opportunities. I don't think I know where they are right now, but I'll give you some ideas of where we could look at some opportunities. The timing couldn't be any more appropriate. This morning when I switched on my TV, the first news I had was BBC. I hardly ever listen to news because it's a psycho at times. But BBC, they were talking about the price of coffee. How many of you are coffee drinkers? The price of coffee, and I know in Sweden you take coffee morning, afternoon, even at night. So coffee has gone up, as has the price of mangoes from India, and all because of what's happening in the Strait of Hormuz. Of course, annually with inflation and everything, prices will go up, but the changes that are happening worldwide are so dramatic and so fast and so unprecedented. We thought COVID was big, and then after COVID there was the Russia-Ukraine conflict. It was also big. And then just as we thought we were, Trump came in. And then there was the US. So Trump himself has been a whole episode for the world. And then finally now we have the Strait of Hormuz. And I don't know how many of you like me, I hadn't really heard much about the Strait of Hormuz other than geography class. How many had heard about it? Or that it would impact me in my home as much as it is impacting me now. But that's the world we are in. And for Africa, whilst we feel we are so not integrated because we're only 2% of global trade, we are actually more integrated than we know, and we are actually the worst impacted when these things happen. And so what happens? We have to rethink our trading, we also have to rethink our partnerships, and we have to rethink how we do business going forward. It's actually existential for African countries because 50% of our GDP is all tied up in trade. 50%. For Sweden and for many other countries, it's less. But Minister, as the ambassador said, for you, you have an immigration problem. How do you combine the immigration challenge with the trade dividends? It has to be different business. And yesterday when I met the colleagues at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs led by Johan, we really had a candid conversation. I know the momentum is shifting. The aid conversation is shifting, and we are all ready for that. But it cannot shift far right, as we are seeing in some countries, where it has shifted totally to investment with no support for facilitation and for trade. You have to find a middle ground. And I know as you rewrite your strategy for Africa and for trading with the rest of the world, you really need to think of what is that sweet spot. And I hope my session this afternoon sparks your mind, both for the African ambassadors. I will make a call of action to all of you, to you, Honorable Minister, and to the colleagues from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and to the business community. All of us have a role to play. So I don't know how I manage this. Do you have a clicker? So I'll just talk about it in 3 parts. I did want to use presentation, but I wanted to have something for you to keep. So I'll tell you briefly about trademark, but I'll also tell you a bit about what we are seeing on the global context and what it's meaning for Africa. Then very quickly I'll look at Nordic Africa trade, because many of the ambassadors especially cover a number of Nordic countries. Then I'll look specifically at where are we seeing the opportunities, where are we seeing growth. They're already the fast movers. They're already the companies that Carl has talked about that have been on the continent for decades, but what are we seeing? And then I'll look at where the emerging opportunities again are. So Trade and Africa is trade and markets. It started 15 years ago. We were looking at the time and cost of business. If you looked at what it took to move goods, and most of the countries we were working with were landlocked in East Africa, what it took to move goods from one point to another, say from the port of Mombasa to Rwanda, which is landlocked, over 21 days. It was a killer. So many countries were struggling with the weight and the burden of doing trade, both for their imports and for their exports. And so we started diagnostics around trade and transport corridors, and we found a number of barriers. It wasn't actually corruption that was the biggest issue. The biggest issues were the delays. And so trademark came in, delays because of bureaucracies, because customs were not speaking to each other, because there were so many red tapes, the whole issue of standards and phytosanitary issues. So we came into effect, and together with partners like the government of Sweden, which is one of our core partners, and many of the other Nordic countries, Norway, Finland, Denmark, they are really funding into this program. We've been able to raise around $1.2 billion in the last decade. This current strategy is around $700 million, and we are covering 23 countries in Africa. We support governments and businesses to identify where the bottlenecks are and to unlock this so that we support intra-African trade and also trade with the rest of the world. I'll move quickly. So the world is changing, I've talked about it, and Africa cannot be passive because we're seeing the multilateral system as we knew it, the rules. You know, those of you who play football, Arsenal, I don't want to start a war, I know there is, the whole weekend was so hectic. But the multilateral trading system has changed. The rules as we knew them have totally changed. You wake up, there are tariffs. You wake up, there's blockages. So it has impacted. And as I said at the start, Africa is hit most because our economies depend on trade. So you can imagine when a tariff hits, when AGOA is cancelled, who hurts most? It's Africa. Think of poor Lesotho. 53% of its GDP, or even more. Their trade was all with the US and AGOA. And now they can't access that market because of the high tariffs. And then China, as of 1st May, has set it has burst the game open. It given Africa, 53 countries in Africa, duty-free, quota-free access. It looks like a sweet deal, but it's not as sweet as it is because they too have tough standards to hit. They too have, so I see many African countries are trying to negotiate with China bilaterally to access this market. It's an opportunity that is amazing. How many billions are they? You can imagine if you just have an eighth of that market. So it has changed the whole game. Now Africa has many people quoting it, as many have said, and China is just one of those, but it has given us duty-free, quota-free. Now what I was telling others, instead of looking at China as the enemy or the other side, is it possible to do business with them? And we saw it with AGOA when we had a lot of Asian firms set up in Africa to actually access the US market. So could it be the same? Can European firms set up in Africa to access the Chinese market? It's a win-win for everyone. You build capabilities, you're also accessing the biggest player on the continent. We can go fast. And Africa is not passive, I must say. Africa, the potential, we've talked about this potential. It is real, it is big. I see it, I cover 23 countries, I travel around the continent. It's amazing what I get to see on a day-to-day basis. The numbers are just, like they're mind-boggling. A $3.5 trillion economy, you know? You are talking about a population of 2.5 billion. You're looking at the minerals. We'll talk a bit more about the minerals, but this is the new thing. This is the new craze. You have Europe, the US, and everyone looking at these minerals for their defense, for their security, for their EVs, but you also have Africa needing these minerals for its own industrial development, for the housing sector, for everything. You need the copper, you need, so different needs, but the minerals are there. In fact, one of our board members, the former Prime Minister of Ethiopia, said, why are we calling them critical raw materials? Critical for who? And of course, the issue is they're critical for everyone. They're critical for Europe, they're critical for the US, but they're also critical for Africa, though their needs may differ. Our needs may not be EVs right now, but we need them for the motorcycle industry. We need them for, so we must see how we make and harness these needs. Oh, I'll go very quickly. They have cut me short. I will not talk about this. Can I control it? So one of the things that is a rallying tool for Africa has been the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. But of course, there's been concern, is it a glass half full, is it a glass half empty? The potential that you talked about, Carl. We have all been wanting this platform to really apply for Africa, not just for trade, but as a catalyst for industry. The tariffs are down. We can now potentially trade without high costs, but we are not competitive and we still have our borders closed. And that's the strong call I made to the ambassadors this morning. Let's clean up our house. We must remove the barriers, both for African companies and for European companies. Because if the barriers exist, and when I say barriers, customs barriers, border delays, controls at the borders, all these deter trade. So we must clean up those things to allow trade to flow internally, but also with our partners. And you'll get all these slides. I wish I could control it and I move to, no, I'll move. So I talked about Africa-Europe trade. Africa-Europe trade is very small. It's big in the grand scheme of things. Europe remains the biggest trading partner for Africa. If you take it as a block, $385 billion. China as a country is the biggest trading partner at $330 billion. China, of course, is quickly overtaking. But if you look at the Nordic countries, unfortunately, it's less than 1% of the GDP of their trading is with Africa. But there's a lot of untapped potential, and that's where we want to maximize. Everyone has talked about this potential for a long time, but we believe at Trademark that finally, with all these things that are happening globally, with the hormones, with the, the shocks, the multiple shocks that are happening, with the immigration question. Now is the time that we can look at how we unlock that potential. And I'll quickly go into, I wish I could control it. You have all the slides. The trade is there. I think we're seeing Nordic trade with Northern Africa growing. So there are opportunities there. Egypt, Tunisia, Morocco, there's really lots of opportunities there because of the EV vehicle and all the rest. But there's also a lot so with Southern Africa and with Central for the agro-processing and the like. You'll get all the slides. So we've talked about this unrealized potential, and we believe that now is the time for this potential to be realized. Please give me 5 more minutes. Okay, I'll just finish on one slide on where we're seeing the case studies. Just before that. No. We've done a lot of research around which companies are already operating in Africa. They're there. They're the first movers. But they are not, they need the support, especially around that trade environment, to make things work better.
Alan,
Yeah.
the minister said you can have 5 minutes.
Oh.
This was interesting.
Gosh, I feel like I'm running. It's a marathon. I wish I could control it because it's just 2 slides I want to talk about. So if you can go back to that one. No. So there are a lot of people, maybe let's go back to that companies that are already there. Yes. If you see Sweden, I was in Norway just 2 days ago, and they are also looking at, of course, the opportunities. Norway is less diversified than Sweden. If you look at Sweden, you actually have companies across all this spectrum, from energy and renewables, where you have a really strong comparative advantage, shipping and logistics, agri-imports and food. You can see some of your companies like Lantmannen, healthcare and pharma. You talked about that rising digital, telecoms and digital. There's so much that Sweden can offer. But it's not a one-way conversation. Africa too can offer a lot. I've talked about the minerals, the horticulture. There's so much that can be. It's a two-way partnership. But how do we make it work? So let me go into the sectors. This is where I see the opportunities. So for critical minerals, of course, DRC, Zambia, Tanzania, Zimbabwe really are the big girls and boys in this game. They have their minerals, but are they tapping them appropriately? That's a question. We are seeing a raft of trade shifts that are actually not appropriate for the continent. There's a lot of rise of nationalism. Let's ban, exports. 13 countries now across Africa have put in place trade bans for raw commodities. Is it the right way? I know Zimbabwe, you've done it, but you still have to get Chinese to come and develop the sector. $200 million needed to develop that sector. We've looked at how Indonesia grew. It also had to do a bit of banning. But you see, you cannot ban without putting in place the productive capacity and the skilling and the enabling environment. And that's where we are looking at partners like Sweden. Can we use the grant funding that has been already provided to make sure that this environment is available? And then you use your comparative advantage in terms of the know-how, that technology transfer, and you make sure that African countries are doing it right. Others, it will be cyclic. You think you're banning to improve, but it's actually not making a difference. So we are making a call to African governments represented by the ambassadors. Yes, you may look at trade policy, but trade bans as a policy shift may not be the most appropriate. Think through the different things that are needed. Look at how countries like Vietnam grew. We can learn a lot from Central Europe as well. I think those two offer opportunities on how we can actually create sustainable pathways for structural transformation in Africa. And we still need the partnerships because the know-how is here. That partnership has to work. Yeah. My call to action, I made this call to the governments. I think when I talked to a lot of businesses, and I'll use the example from Norway, I used it this morning. I looked at the 35,000 companies that are in operation in Norway. 92% are SMEs, so they have less than 50 staff, which means they're not going to want to risk far. They want to do their business in Europe. And it's normal. You normally trade with your neighbor. Not so. But there's the 8%, the ones you've seen, Nosken and the others, that are so ambitious, they want to go out. How do we facilitate them to actually thrive, not to break down when they enter these economies? How do we support them to spread out, when they reach these economies? Because the top 3 risks and issues that have been identified by the businesses, and I know some of you will raise your own businesses. I was speaking to Kamjisha outside. She brings in agro-produce from Tanzania. And she told me, Alan, the Nordic one is not working. I have to expand across Europe because the market and the demand does not support my logistics. It's powerful. She's already doing business by herself. She hasn't been paid. She's bringing in produce. But she needs, I'm finishing, this is the last slide. Can I go back, please? It's the last slide. So the main issue is, can we have our governments look at the policy, trade environment, remove of non-tariff barriers, I really want to appreciate the Swedish government, the funding they're giving us across 3 corridors, and the Djibouti corridor, the Lapset corridor, that's Kenya to Ethiopia, and the Abidjan-Lagos corridor is all about reducing non-tariff barriers. But I said it this morning to the ambassadors, there's also a political imperative for our presidents, our leaders, to actually put a stop to these barriers because they're harming the continent. So a lot around ensuring certainty and consistency of laws. To our partners, market knowledge and information. If you look at the top 3 issues that are deterring European business from investing in Africa, it's the perception of risk, real or perceived. It's the issue around knowledge and information, and it's trade finance. And I do know you have a lot of instruments, but are they appropriate? Could it be timely to revisit them to ensure that they are targeting the right issues? And then to the businesses, there's a lot of opportunities. It's a $3.5 trillion economy. Come and invest in Africa. Thank you.
Honorable Minister, again, thank you for being with us. We are eager to hear your remarks. And I don't want to influence your speech, but I hope you reflect on the barriers and how Sweden can control the market. We want you to control the market. We want you to trade with all these 22 African countries that are represented here and beyond, even those who are not represented by missions. Welcome. Thank you.
A special thanks to Her Excellency Ambassador Dr. Diana Gashumba, Dean of the African Heads of Mission, for her leadership and for bringing us all together on this, I think, very important, but not only important, also very timely occasion. And let me also thank all the previous speakers for their insightful remarks, and I believe that they highlight in many ways both all the opportunities that we see there, and then they're enormous, but there are also challenges, of course, needless to say. And that is exactly where all our partnerships, where they need to deliver concrete results. And I heard this thing a few minutes ago about not saying no to Africa, and I think that is, of course, very true. And I believe it's very difficult to say no to Africa. But I also know something else for sure. It's very easy to say yes to Africa. And that must be our ambition. Yeah. And it's a great pleasure to once again celebrate Africa Day here in Stockholm. It's wonderful also to see that this year's occasion also includes a business forum with opportunities for networking and of course also sharing experiences between our countries and regions. And I know that many Team Sweden representatives are here today, and as well are also many Swedish and also many Nordic countries. And I think that is exactly where we should be, going from aid, moving forward to trade. And that was something that I spent a lot of time doing in my former capacity as Minister for Development Cooperation and Foreign Trade. And also something where I continue to put a lot of effort in my new capacity. And this year's theme, African Nordic Synergies for Sustainable Growth, is, like I said, both timely and important. And it also reminds us that sustainable growth is built through partnerships and through innovation, and of course the exchange of knowledge and talent. And over the past 3.5 years as a minister, I have had the sincere privilege of traveling across parts of the African continent. From Monrovia in the west to Nairobi in the east, and from Cairo in the north to Lusaka in the south. And I met with many ministers, I met with companies, I met with entrepreneurs, I met with researchers, I met with must be hundreds of students during all these trips. And of course I have many memories to share, but one thing that I would like to say that has actually struck me during all these trips is the fact that across the whole continent, wherever I've been, there is a very strong and very shared ambition to grow and to innovate and to build these very lasting partnerships. And I want you all in this room to know that the Swedish government, we are very committed to building stronger partnerships with African countries, of course through trade, but also through innovation and the exchange of knowledge and talent. And in many ways, I believe that this is a very unique combination that we do have. Because you have something that we are lacking in Sweden nowadays and in the rest of Europe too. You have a very young and vibrant population. I see some young people here in the audience. I want you to know that one day you will also look at yourself in the mirror and see that you're not young anymore. It happens to everyone. But it is a fact that you have this very vibrant and forward-leaning population. We don't have that, like I said, in Sweden any longer, but we have something else. We have some of the world's best and most brightest and most talented private companies that are out there. And that is the kind of unique combination I believe is so essential for us all to succeed together. And this is what we refer to as Made with Sweden. And in many ways it reflects this very simple idea. It reflects this idea that concrete but also long-lasting results, they are not created in isolation. They are created in partnerships. And trade is, of course, so extremely essential to this approach. And Sweden has, like you know, we have a very strong and growing commercial ties all across the African continent. I am very proud of that. And in a number of different African countries, we are seeing long-standing industrial cooperation for many years, for many decades, in fact. In others, we see a very strong and strong potential in digitalization. That could be innovation, of course. We know that many African countries are also making progress in exporting to Sweden, and that is also something very important to keep in mind. The trade is not a one-way street. It goes in two directions. Not only trade, also what we can learn from each other. In many ways, I believe that you can learn from us, even though we are only a medium-sized country far up in the north. But in so many other ways, I know that we can learn from you and all the experience that you have in so many areas. And that is the great thing about trade. It makes everyone a winner. So your countries are increasingly adding value to your own production before exporting, and Sweden is very proud to contribute to all these efforts. And that is why, even though we are saying made with Sweden as our new slogan, it also means made with Africa. And that is important to keep in mind. So building partnerships also means building knowledge together. And it's not only about trade, because for many decades, Sweden has built very strong academic ties across Africa, including through long-standing collaboration between, for example, Karolinska Institutet, and also institutions such as Muhimbili University in Tanzania, I hope that I got that right, but also Makerere University in Uganda, where researchers and professionals are working side by side. Isn't that beautiful? I think it is. And they combine research, education, and also practical implementation, and they build capacity that lasts. And that brings me to another defining factor in Sweden's partnership with African countries, and that is, of course, talent. And the Swedish government, we are now taking very concrete steps to make Sweden more attractive to international talent. We are only a couple of weeks ago, in fact, we implemented new and very concrete reforms to improve all the conditions for researchers and students, to simplify processes for highly skilled professionals, and also to ensure that Sweden remains a very competitive destination for knowledge and innovation. Because in today's very globalized economy, the ability to attract talent, just what we mentioned here before, that is a key driver of growth and also of competitiveness, of course. And like I said, to grow African talent in Sweden and in Swedish companies in Africa also means growing talent for Africa. And in my current role as Minister for Migration, I've also had the opportunity to engage with partners across Africa on many of these issues. I recently, only a couple of weeks ago, I recently visited the African Union in Addis Ababa, where we discussed how to strengthen cooperation on labor mobility and also skills development, something that is very much needed in Sweden and European Union today. And through very concrete initiatives that support skills matching and also legal migration pathways, not to forget. Sweden and African partners are working together to ensure that mobility contributes to this long-term economic growth. Another area where our partnership continues to grow is the green and digital transition, of course. And across Africa, I think it's really beautiful to see. We see innovation in renewable energy, we see digital services, and also infrastructure. In fact, it's impossible not to see it anywhere you go in Africa today. Sweden is committed to being a very long-term partner to you in in these areas, in this transformation of Africa. And I also believe that Sweden's industrial basis is uniquely positioned to support us. So, Excellencies and ladies and gentlemen, Africa Day, which was this Monday on May the 25th, of course marks the anniversary of the creation of the Organization of African Unity in 1963. And Sweden has been a very strong supporter of the Pan-African idea since then. And you, all the African embassies here in Stockholm, all of you, you embody this idea as you today and also tomorrow organize the celebration of the African Day. So a strong African cooperation and integration really creates the right conditions for peace, for freedom and economic growth on your continent. And the European Union, like we are representing here today, or that I am representing, has been created with the same very strong vision. And a strong Africa is beneficial also for Europe. And my government really believes in a prosperous Africa. So let me conclude by once again thanking all of you for the very warm welcome. I thank you for the partnership that we continue to build. And it means a great deal to be able to celebrate Africa Day with you again, building on the experiences and all the relationships that have developed over time. But I want you to know something, and I will end by this. Or end, I'm a politician, so I can speak forever. That's not a problem. I want to take this opportunity to thank you for all the hard work that you have accomplished, for all the results that you have accomplished, for all the cooperation that we have had together, Sweden and all the African countries, over the past decades. I am very proud of that. But I'm also very firm on something else. And that is the fact that the best is yet to come. Thank you.
We need a photo outside. I'll be coming shortly.
Let's go.
Yes, direct and.
We think more using the Yes, come.
Take a picture.
Yes. 073 673 5482. Victor.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, what's your name? From the Egyptian embassy. Yes. Give me a call now. I need to talk. Yes. You're working in the Egyptian embassy? That's good. Yeah, good, because I saw her this morning. We need to. Yes. Yeah. All right. Send me a message on WhatsApp, anyways. Yeah. Okay, come.
Please go and take a picture. Yes, that's what we are doing. Yes. Otherwise,
It's a real pleasure to join you today to this African Day Business Seminar on the African-Nordic synergies for sustainable growth. Allow me at the outset to acknowledge Her Excellency the Dean, Ambassador of Rwanda, my colleague Diane, as well as Her Excellency Priscilla, Ambassador of Zimbabwe, and Deputy Dean for their important dedication and contribution in the genesis of the preparation of today's event. I would like also to thank all our partners, especially Business Sweden, for its contribution to strengthening commercial dialogue and economic cooperation between Sweden and the African countries. A warm thank you also goes to the Ambassador of Egypt, who will host us tomorrow for the cultural events, and to a community for graciously hosting us today. Ladies and gentlemen, really I am delighted to speak about one of the most important economic partnerships, the growing relationship between Africa and the Nordic countries. Africa Day, as you know, is always an important moment for reflection, but also for taking stock of achievements and looking into the future. For us, Africa Day is also an opportunity not only to celebrate history and diversity of our continent, but also to highlight the real transformation that we are noticing taking place in our continent today. And celebrating Africa Day in Sweden is also a valuable opportunity to further strengthen these ties of cooperation, dialogue, and partnership. For many years, as it was said before, discussions about Africa focused mainly on aid, humanitarian support, and development challenges. But today, that narrative is changing rapidly. Africa is increasingly becoming a continent of opportunity, innovation, entrepreneurship, and economic transformation. Africa is a home to more than 1.5 billion people. And by 2050, 1 in 4 people in the world will be African. It is also the youngest continent globally, with a fast expanding workforce, rising urbanization, and increasing digital connectivity. These trends are not only reshaping Africa itself, but also creating significant opportunities for international cooperation and investment. The question, indeed, is no longer whether Africa matters to the global economy. The real question today is how Nordic countries can engage more strategically and more actively with the Africans' economic growth. Ladies and gentlemen, now as we move into the workshop segment of today's program, we also move from discussion toward engagement, from reflection toward practical collaboration. Why? Because Africa doesn't lack opportunities. What is needed is the ability to transform dialogue to implementation, investment, shared growth, and partnerships. Today, Africa is more and more asserting itself as a strategic actor in the global economy. At the same time, Sweden has established itself as a country recognized globally for innovation, sustainability, advanced industry, green transition, technology, and entrepreneurship. Swedish companies are respected internationally for their long-term vision, adaptability, and commitment to sustainable business practices. This creates a strong basis for deeper economic cooperation between African countries and Swedish stakeholders across multiple sectors. Some of the strongest areas of opportunities are the green energy, digital transformation, agriculture, education, and there is more and more. It is important to recognize indeed that many challenges still remain. But at the same time, they should not overshadow opportunities. The nature of partnership is important. Africa should not be approached only as a market to access or a source of raw materials. The future lies increasingly in co-development, industrial partnerships, technology transfer, and the value creation that benefit all sides. This means partnerships that support local transformation based on mutual respect, long-term commitment, and shared interest. The African Continental Free Trade Agreement, the trade area, is also contributing to more integrated and connected African economic space, opening new possibilities for regional values chain, manufacturing, logistic, and investment opportunities at scale. For Swedish businesses, this creates opportunities not only within individual African markets, but within an evolving continental economic ecosystem. Equally important is the role of trust. Strong economic partnerships are not built only through transactions. They are built through credibility and consistency, knowledge sharing, and sustained engagement. In this regard, the African diaspora in Sweden also represents an important bridge connecting networks, cultures, talents, and entrepreneurship between Africa and Sweden. Ladies and gentlemen, I will finish. Don't worry, I don't have the 5 minutes of the minister today. The workshop discussion beginning shortly should therefore be approached not simply as networking sessions, but a space to identify concrete avenue for cooperation. I encourage participants to engage openly and pragmatically to ask, what can we build together? What expertise can we combine? And what long-term partnership can emerge from today's discussion? And more importantly, how do we ensure that the partnerships created today produce tangible and sustainable impact tomorrow? The future of Africa's economic partnership will not be defined only by speeches or conferences. It will be defined by what we implement together afterward. I wish you productive discussion, meaningful exchanges, and successful partnership, and thank you.
In 3 minutes, I'll share my personal love story with Africa, lessons from doing business in Africa, and my outlook on the continent. When I was 16 years old, I decided I wanted to go to Africa. Started saving up money. When I turned 18, graduated from high school, I told my parents, fait accompli, I'm going to Africa. They said, what? Where are you going and when are you coming back? I said, I don't know. I bought a one-way ticket to Nairobi. I flew to Nairobi, I placed one call home, and I sent one postcard in 4 months. Not a nice thing to do as a child, I think. But I learned a lot. I fell in love with Africa, and since I've kept coming back, I visited more than 30 countries over the years. I was a consultant at McKinsey working in Nigeria for a year. And I was a global president at EF Education First for quite a few years. I established the East Africa hub of EF in Kigali, Rwanda. We were the first tenant at the Norrsken House in Kigali, and I know Sarah Kappelmark, the co-CEO of Norrsken, will tell you more about that. And it was such a vibrant environment, which Sarah will share more of. But what we did in Rwanda, which has been since replicated in many other places by EF and others, we worked in a public-private partnership. So the government of Rwanda realized, because of its geolocation, landlocked, not so much minerals, they decided we need to upskill and reskill our population. So EF Education First came in, worked with the RDB, the Rwanda Development Board, and the MasterCard Foundation to roll out a countrywide program for the tourism and hospitality industry, trained every single employee in English proficiency and service skills and knowledge about the tourism sector. which has led to a number of other things, including teacher training and student training. That type of partnership, working in a lockstep fashion between the public and the private, is the ticket to ride. Also, what's worked very successfully in Sweden, the triple helix model, where the public sector, academia, and private business work together, is also a phenomenal way to get development and progress. Now, because of my 3 minutes, the outlook. So I run an AI company on a daily basis. I was at the Africa AI Summit, there's been a few of them. And the starting point is not too good for Africa. There's about 40 languages out of the 2,000 on the African continent that have actually LLMs covering them. It's about, there's 90+% of languages that still are not kind of connected to any of the large language models. There's about 100 data centers in Africa, obviously many more being planned. NVIDIA chips are hitting the ground across the continent. But this is a major opportunity for Africa, obviously, AI. But the fundamental thing that has been pointed out by previous speakers, the energetic, the young, the vibrant population of Africa, eager to learn, to get new skills, and being connected to the world is what's going to propel the continent upwards. And let me tell you this, from my experience, drawing the lines from when I first landed in Nairobi many, many years ago, it's actually over 30 years ago today, is the commitment of development and the opportunities for Africa to have a sustainable development, to leapfrog areas where we in our part of the world have made so many mistakes when it comes to investments into different energy sources and so on. So renewables can be leveraged across the African continent and really build innovation and entrepreneurship and create sustainable companies. And that's what I'm engaged in to this date, and we look forward to working with African partners. We are running an AI startup that helps companies and governments to decode all of their activities and essentially report and manage carbon, so to keep track of carbon and make our future more sustainable with less carbon. We aim to produce a profitable path to net zero. So that's what we're here to do. Thank you, that was my 3 minutes, and congratulations.
The previous speaker already laid the foundation of what I'm going to talk about. I will begin with saying, with all protocols followed, thank you so much for this opportunity to talk about my work. What I'm going to talk about is my work here in Sweden, and also the possibility of extending this to the African continent. It's already been said, 2050, 1 in every 4 persons is going to be an African. So that's a huge number of people. While that is a great workforce, is the workforce fully developed to match the demands that is upcoming? So I want to begin with introducing what I do. So we are called Ready School of Digital Integration. We are a non-profit organization, currently with 2 stations here in Sweden, one in Malmö, the other one is in Gothenburg. And what we do is we provide digital education to people. We cut all the corners of asking people to come with high-level certification. Everything we do is hands-on. Next slide. This is what our school looks like. Thank you. Can you just go down again, just to the back slide? So this is what our schools look like. Everything we do is hands-on. You come in there, you apply for the education. It's free because we're doing this in partnership with companies like Microsoft, IBM, and so other many other IT companies. Okay, so move on. Okay, it's me. Okay, thank you. So what we try to do is building bridges between education, innovation, entrepreneurship, and the labor market. Currently in Sweden, our clients are governments. Malmö Stad, for example, which is the community where I live, it's our partner in this. So we train people that the labor market in Malmö is looking for. As I said, we just started a new office in Gothenburg. Again, it's there with it's along with the municipality. So what the municipality does to us, or what they do with us, is ask us, or they tell us, these are the kind of skills that we need. Can you please train these people for us? And in partnership with companies like Microsoft or IBM, we develop people to make those workforces that are needed. Okay, next slide. We're currently in 12 cities: Berlin, Malmö, Köpenhamn, and then in Gothenburg, as I recently said. There are ongoing discussions here in Stockholm as well. Next slide. So this is what it looks like. There are those that comes to us without any digital education at all. None. Never touched a computer before, never had a computer before. And it goes all the way to what we call the digital career programs. This is where we talk about the high-tech IT courses. Then we're talking about Java programming, we're talking about data analytics, we're talking about Scrum, and so on and so forth. These are some of the partners that are currently sponsoring us as part of that. And these partners, they come in with lots of different types of tools. Everything from the teachers that are provided, the classrooms, the computers, and the tools that we use. I see it's almost my time is off. Next. So what do we bring? We bring experience in delivering this kind of accessible education for beginners and advanced learners that we bring to you. We also bring industry-driven curriculum connected to real workforce. So if you're a country, you need a certain type of workforce, a certain type of knowledge within the IT, we can help you do that. Also, partnership involving governments, companies, universities, and so on and so forth. We've been doing that for many years now. I'm quite good at it. Together, I think we can do this together. Next. So these are possible areas for your countries that we can work with. So women and youth, joint AI, now Quen just talked about that. I think that's great. The teachers' mentorship programs, entrepreneurship, and startup ecosystems. Next slide. Next slide again. Yeah. Yeah, you've already seen this. I already talked about this, so you're going to save 1 more minute, and then I'm done. Having said all this, there are also opportunities for funding. Now I've talked about what we can do. Together, if you agree that you're interested in some of the concepts I've talked about, there are also possibilities for funding. But the funding has to be one that is committed by the government of your country that says they are interested in doing this, and together we can pursue our funding opportunities. So if you find this interesting, please do meet me up and we can have a discussion. I was supposed to come here with our funding specialist, who unfortunately couldn't make it. But if we book a meeting, I could have a meeting to talk about possibilities of cooperation and funding opportunities.
I will start by saying as well that the first speaker actually started off well for me, because he was talking about moving to Africa. And as for me, it was a dream to move to Europe. However, when I came to Europe, my first country I came to, I was shocked. I was like, is this Europe? Because when you're growing up in Africa, you believe that all European countries are just all glitter and gold. So I was very shocked. I landed in Ukraine, and at a time in the 90s when Ukraine was very underdeveloped, and I was coming from Zimbabwe at a time when Zimbabwe was quite developed. So it was quite a shock. And then I came to Denmark, where I have been living now for 28 years. So when I landed in Denmark, I was like, okay, this is kind of Europe, but where's the sun? So again, this is when I understood that my role was really to be the bridge. So from the minute I entered Denmark, I could feel that I wanted to be the bridge between the two worlds. And the longer I stayed in Denmark, the more the calling I felt, because when I went home to Zimbabwe, I'm half Zimbabwean, half Zambian, I could feel that I was missing Denmark. And every time I'm in Denmark, I am missing home. So I'm like, okay, I am the bridge. So this is why I created Impact Connectors, to connect Nordic companies with Southern and Eastern African markets, and not only to connect, to advise, to consult as well, because there are many nuances that a lot of companies I have observed underlook when they're doing business in Africa, particularly the cultural aspect. I'll give you one example. One company I was consulting in the beginning of my consultancy, they say to me, I was in a group, and they say to me, we can easily tell when a company is corrupt by the way they talk to you. And I was very curious. I'm like, can you explain? And then they said, most of them don't look at you. They'll be looking down when you're speaking to them. They don't give you eye contact. And I said, oh, very interesting. Because in most African culture, not giving you contact is actually respecting you. So that was a very interesting dialogue I had. So this also made me feel that there's a lot in culture that is not looked at when companies are doing business in Africa, and yet it's some of the, or maybe one of the most important aspects to actually consider when you're doing business. There's a lot of talent, there's a lot of skills, and resources too. But that aspect, if it's not connected between the two worlds, I find that it can be very difficult. So this is my role, not only to consult, not only to advise, but to be the connector, to help sort of pen out those differences and make sure that there is sustainable businesses had. And one other example I would like to give as well, that has been a very good story for my company, is a company that asked me to do some strategy solutions and for marketing and sales. They were selling a lot of their products. It's a solar company. They were selling a lot of their products for 3 years, but then suddenly it stalled. And then I went in to evaluate, why are they not selling more? Again, this is something to do with the diversities, not only the diversities of Africa, but also the diversities within the country that you're operating in. It's very important to understand or to map out, are you going to work in a village? Are you going to work in a growth point? Are you going to work in a low density area? Are you going to work in a high density area? Those are cultural differences that are also important to understand when you're going to work in Africa. So it's not just going to Ghana, going to Zimbabwe. There's also some nuances within these countries that are imperative to actually understand. And then now, I think I'll just move on to saying that this dialogue continues, and out of the passion that I have for Africa, and of course the Nordics, I wrote a book, A Guide to Doing Business in Southern Africa. Although it says Southern Africa, a lot of these elements in the book are, can be related to by many African countries. I wrote it with a personal touch and also a lived experience, business experience, things that the Excel sheet cannot tell you, but things that people, ordinary people on the streets can tell you. And also I would like to emphasize the role of people like me, diaspora. We have a unique opportunity to actually be the bridge culturally and also business-wise, because we understand both worlds. Thank you.
So people from East Africa can easily tell what Kabisa means. It's all right, all good, which means everything we do at Kabisa is all good. So what does Kabisa do? Kabisa is a company that our headquarters is in Rwanda, but we do have a goal, 2 goals. This is why we call Kabisa EV Hub, which is having an EV hub in each and every country. So Kabisa is a company that sells electric vehicles. We provide an ecosystem. So we do sell electric vehicles, we do maintenance, And the most important part is the charging infrastructure. And our main goal, something that we started earlier this year, is what we call EV highway. Now, growing up, we were promised to have a railway. I thought at this age, I'll be able to move from Cape Town to like 15, 20 countries in a train, chilling. I'm yet to still get that. But as Kabisa, what we've decided to do is to handle this while we're still waiting for that. And we have something that we call EV highway. So this is electrifying Africa. Last week before I came, we had something called Road to Africa, where we kicked off electric vehicles from Kabisa EV House to move to Dar es Salaam, to Zambia, to Zimbabwe, and Mozambique. And then Mozambique is the final destination, and we come back. Why do we do this? We have done about 8 trips. We also do Kenya to Mombasa and all that. The reason why we do this is that we need to showcase that trading in Africa is no longer a thought. It's something that we implement. It's something that you can see. We do send an articulated truck, 55 ton, all the way from Kigali and across all these countries. Now, allow me to use East Africa as an example. East Africa uses about $5 billion in fuel. Electrifying these countries allows us to save at least 60% of cost of that. Now, in just trading goods, we trade about 137 billion USDs just in East Africa. Lowering that cost through electrifying these countries is a major game changer in this trade market. As for Rwanda, we are, yes, landlocked, and so we get everything, all the products expensive in Rwanda. But with Kabisa, then we are helping each and every country to also bring in their goods in Africa at a lower cost. Now, my action point here is the Kabisa EV Hub. So if each country, right now we have Kabisa Kenya, Kabisa Rwanda, we're also setting up Kabisa Tanzania and Uganda. But what we would like to have is to make sure that each and every country in Rwanda, in Africa, has a Kabisa EV Hub. This is a hub that will help us sell electric vehicles, put out charging infrastructure. You can imagine the barriers that we have all the way, if I have to move from Rwanda all the way to Mozambique and come back. The barriers, the lack of charging infrastructure, but what Kabisa is doing is that we get to collect the data that is needed for all these countries, whether political, whether infrastructure. Of course, there are some countries that have good grid, there are others that are still suffering. How do we incorporate solar and all that? So all the data that we collect helps us electrify Africa. And I hope each and every one of you who's here can join us to pioneer this mission that we have to electrify Africa with electric vehicles. Thank you so much.
Wonderful honor to get to be here today and speak with you all. There's so many amazing people here that I would rather like to listen to, but I thought that I'll say a few words about what we do at Norrsken so you know when you should come and talk to me, because we are really all about partnerships in so many aspects. So Norrsken was started here in Stockholm by Niklas, who's still our chairman, who was one of the co-founders of Klarna, which is a unicorn born out of Stockholm. He decided to sell his shares in Klarna and donate his wealth to back other entrepreneurs who are solving the world's greatest challenges and contributing to our solving our shared challenges. And we really believe that, I mean, what if the world had 1,000 more Kabisas? That is the dream of, like, how can that happen? More people deciding to become founders of such companies, and how can we tilt the odds of them being successful? And Norrsken now started in Sweden, but is now a network of a bit more than 1,000 companies across primarily Europe and Africa. We have 100,000 people engaged both in these companies and as entrepreneurs and investors. And we have 4 different investment funds, 2 based in Africa, 1 seed fund and 1 growth fund, that we're leveraging to catalyze capital to founders. And My colleagues in Norscan 22, which is our growth fund, together with our Africa Seed Fund, have jointly invested in a bit more than 50 companies across, to date, 10 African countries. We're looking forward to more to come. And really, there's so many amazing stories to be told here about these health tech entrepreneurs, the renewable energy entrepreneurs, the fintech entrepreneurs, but more to dig into. Exactly, take a photo and look them up. And in addition to the funds, we have a wonderful hub in Kigali, Rwanda, that is the base of 1,400 people on a daily basis working on their particular businesses. And then, like, okay, so Norrsken, is that then real estate, or like, what is it? Like, I mean, to some extent, I'm super humble too, that every time I'm there, I'm mostly learning. There are like 1,400 smart people knowing a lot more about what they are particularly doing than I do. But we do try to see, like, well, with the market intelligence that we can get, though, like, totally where is each hub at that we are at, that we're partnering with Deal Room to get data for Rwanda. What are things that we can do to, like, strengthen the community and network, strengthen the knowledge and talent, strengthen the access to capital, strengthen the spotlight and status to entrepreneurs? And I won't go through all the things, but just to take a couple of examples of what that can look like. So everyone who builds a startup in Stockholm have probably used a tool called Startup Tools. That is where everyone goes for, like, easy templates to everything that is boring. So, like, how do I write my first employment contract? How do I write an NDA? The Startup Tools team, then we thought that, well, this is needed in Rwanda. We haven't seen this. There were a fantastic organization called CERTA Foundation, that is a legal expert organization, who said that we can translate your best document to Rwandan law. So they partnered up together, made that happen, and we made that accessible to the community, and there are like 300 companies who've used those templates to date. That would be one example. Another example being, like, we have our funds that we invest with, but everyone who drives business knows that there are quite a lot of different financial instruments that are suitable for different companies in different phases and equities. We then have a person who now helps with structuring and matching those things. That Bank of Kigali said, we would love to lend to these companies, but can we work together for how do we assess a company that actually doesn't have a closed annual report yet? I would love to tell you more also about all of those different things that we're working on with our partners, but catch me. Final thing I'll say is that this is also one that I'm so humble to, that all the jobs created are created by the entrepreneurs, but there's something that is important for us as well that we track closely. Can we tilt the odds of more people getting jobs with a startup? So the graph to the right, this is the total number of people who work at a startup in Rwanda, and we would love to see this grow even more. The one to the left is how many work in the companies that we specifically invested in with Norscan 22, which is now a bit more than 4,000. And this is just the beginning. I mean, we sometimes say in the team that a sign of success is that we look at what we did right now, a year from now, and we will laugh at how little we knew and how little we had done. So we're right now exploring multiple additional activities across the continent, and particularly doubling down on AI, as CJ also mentioned before. So if you would like to team up on anything, then please reach out. We're very happy to be on this journey together. Thank you.
And I'm originally from Sierra Leone. I think every business that has been created, there is a reason why the business has been created. And it's not different from why I started a business in Sweden. I moved to Sweden just after the end of the Civil War in Sierra Leone. I had gone through very bad experience and had the opportunity to move to Sweden. But then when I landed in Sweden, I was sent to a refugee camp in a very small part of Sweden, where 98% of the people I encountered knew nothing about Sierra Leone, which was quite interesting. And the 2% I met who knew about Sierra Leone could only associate Sierra Leone to the war. Whenever I spoke of Sierra Leone, I said, oh, that country had a bloody civil war. But I thought at that moment there was much more about the war in Sierra Leone. And the fact that people didn't know about Sierra Leone gave me the motivation to want to do something. Over the years, as I transitioned from being a refugee to a permanent resident in Sweden, I went to university. And it was at the university I started putting together a project. It was about how to educate people about Africa, Sierra Leone in particular. And I know for sure Swedish people love to travel. Statistics says that about 60-70% of the time we spend at our workplaces is spent on looking for the next destination to travel. So that was something I thought I could do. So I started by traveling to Sierra Leone and just taking random pictures, which I posted online. And trust me, the amount of positive reaction I got from those pictures was quite overwhelming. People say, you have these nice places in Sierra Leone, you have beaches in Sierra Leone, you have this and that in Sierra Leone. It grew my interest, and after some time, someone contacted me from the Ministry of Tourism in Sierra Leone, who had wanted me to help in marketing Sierra Leone in Scandinavia, which I thought was quite interesting because I was already doing my own little marketing. So with that support, I started engaging Swedish companies, travel agencies across Sweden. It was quite a daunting task because for most people, they only could associate Sierra Leone to war. No Swede want to travel to Sierra Leone. But that changed over time because I had an opportunity to get sponsorship from Air Morocco, which helped me take about 10 Swedish companies, travel agencies to Sierra Leone. They saw Sierra Leone, they had a different perspective, and they started packaging Sierra Leone. So since then, they have been taking people to Sierra Leone. And I have also made sure that the trips to Sierra Leone are not just trips for people to go and enjoy themselves and come back. Being the person I am, I started off with what you would call a humble beginning, but it was a very horrible beginning. I came from very poor circumstances. So my model is to ensure that the trips to Sierra Leone go through across most areas that are neglected by the government. So through that, I've been able to help communities to create touristic stuff to sell to tourists. So I have tried over these years with my company and my friends, helped a lot of communities in Sierra Leone. That has worked well. But beyond that, I also realized that there is a need to help companies in Sierra Leone to market their products. So there was one time I went to Sierra Leone for holiday when an old friend approached me and told me that he had some diamonds. I had never seen diamonds, even though myself I'm from Sierra Leone, which has a lot of diamonds. But he gave me the opportunity to see the diamonds myself and to also extend my network. So I created my company called Case Consulting just to help people, to link companies in Sweden and to Sierra Leone. And over the years, I have helped Ministry of Health, companies in Sweden, companies in Germany, France, to do business in Sierra Leone. So if I stand here to share with you my story, I don't want to bore you with all the information I have, but I think this is quite interesting to share and maybe inspire people, especially brothers and sisters in the diaspora, to want to do something to Africa for the sake of our people. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, Your Excellency.
Good afternoon.
I must say, Happy Africa Day.
Thank you.
Yes. The last time we had an interview, we talked a bit about the Green Legacy Initiative. Tell us how far that initiative has gone, and what are the achievements so far, and what are the prospects so far?
Well, you know, this initiative has been started by our Prime Minister 7 years ago, as soon as he came to the premiership, and it has been continuing every year during the rainy season. That means from July to September. So this year also we are planning to have the same program, where almost everybody in the country will go out and plant trees. So far we have planted more than 25 billion trees in the country, and this year also we are still waiting for the plan, how many trees we are going to plant, but every year we plant mostly from 5 to 6 billion trees. So we are expecting to do the same thing, and it is giving us around 80% of trees coverage in the country. So it has changed also the climate. It's becoming very important for our climate and environment in Ethiopia.
Great. Let's go to telecoms. Safaricom is now operating. What new opportunities will follow for Swedish fintech and payment solutions when the banking sector fully opens to foreign competition?
Well, in Ethiopia, because of the opening of the economy and opening of the telecom sector in the country, now there are a lot of opportunities. As you know, Safaricom is already there. We have also opened for other operators to come in, and with Safaricom we have a lot of apps, a lot of systems coming in with M-Pesa and other opportunities. At the same time, the Ethiopian Telecom also, they have upgraded their services. They have implemented new services like Telebir, we call it same like M-Pesa. So there are opportunities for Swedish telecom or other IT companies to come in, and there are also other facilities that they can involve in this regard. So the opportunities are there. Before the telecom sector was closed for foreign investors, but now it is open for foreign investors. So opportunities are there, and they can come and actually Ericsson from Sweden, Nokia from Finland, they are still involved in Ethiopia in the technology transfer and other programs.
Okay. Coffee. Ethiopia is Africa's largest coffee producer, but exports mostly raw. What customs rebates exist for Swedish companies building roasting or avocado oil processing plants?
Well, our main aim is, not to continue exporting raw coffee or, as you said, avocado. We want to add value. We have been exporting coffee. We have been exporting other agriculture products, not only to the Nordics, but to the world. We are the biggest exporters of coffee from Ethiopia, from Africa now. And, this is increasing. So we want the value addition. We want these big companies to come to Ethiopia in different sectors. And one of the sectors which our government is, promoting is the agro-processing. So this includes coffee, pulses, and, sesame and other products. So it's not only coffee, but fruits, vegetables. So we are looking into value addition and not continuing, exporting raw materials only.
Thank you very much.
You are welcome. Thank you for the opportunity.
Happy Africa Day, Your Excellency.
Happy Africa Day to you.
Yes. Let's talk about Rwanda a bit. We go into drone and logistics corridors. What regulatory sandbox opportunities exist for Swedish autonomous vehicle or cargo drone companies testing beyond visual line of sight?
You've seen this young lady from a company called Kabisa.
Yes.
And they do electrical vehicles, and they want to electrify Africa. Said on the road to Africa. So electrical vehicles is part of the green energy policy in Rwanda. And Pofia, that you saw here, came to present the policy and the opportunities, but also the incentives that the government of Rwanda put in place. And as you know, Sweden is far developed when it comes to electrical vehicles and green energy. So this is one of the priorities that I can mention that are here in the room and that are in line with the green energy and the green economy.
Okay, let's go to Made in Rwanda. Beyond coffee and tea, what support is available for Swedish light manufacturing?
Rwanda has banned plastic use. Rwanda was the first country to ban plastic use because of the threat plastic constitutes for lives of people. So we need alternatives in packaging. So we are discussing with many Swedish companies to join this ambition and to create jobs, but also to create industries that can produce plastic alternatives to plastic when it comes to packaging. But we also know that Rwanda's life science is really moving fast. We started a very ambitious project aiming at reducing the quantity of medicines and vaccines we import from outside Rwanda. So we started local manufacturing of drugs and vaccines with the support of BioNTech. This is another area Sweden can join and contribute to in Rwanda.
Okay, let's go to financial inclusion and digital ID. Rwanda's digital ID is advanced. How can Swedish fintechs build credit scoring and InsurTech products using the national data infrastructure?
You already followed the presentation from Norquen. So Norquen is already in Rwanda. They have chosen Rwanda as their destination. And this company, this non-for-profit company, train and promote and grow small companies, incubators, young talents, including in IT and technology. So this is already a good start, and as a government, the government of Rwanda support this initiative, and we want to see it expanded to more young people because it helps building the skills of our young people, but also grow their talent, their ideas into something viable and sellable. And we are very grateful for these partnerships. And as you know, IT and technology is a high priority for Rwanda. Now we're moving into expanding the small data centers that we have, and we are discussing with some partners here in Sweden to make this dream a reality.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency.
Thank you.
Thank you. Africa Day, Your Excellency.
Happy Africa Day to you too.
Yes, the last time we talked with you, we talked about the mining sector in Zimbabwe. Tell us, what are the recent developments in the mining sector in Zimbabwe, and how conducive is it for Swedish companies and companies all over Europe to enter the Zimbabwean market?
As you know, we did speak about the issue of critical minerals.
Yes.
And the geopolitics that is taking place indicate that there is more interest in Africa, particularly in the minerals that are in Africa, for a number of reasons. Energy issues have become problematic for Europe, but also the rising wars and conflicts that are in Europe. The current crisis that is happening in the Middle East. There are so many factors that have happened that have raised the issue around minerals, critical minerals for Europe, but also for ourselves. I think there's a realization as technology moves that there's more that we can do with our minerals, with our critical minerals. Lithium, for example, its role in providing alternative energy in the battery system. But I think what we need to be developing is a proper policy framework that allows for this trade to happen in a just manner, in a sustainable manner, which is why the theme for Africa Day is sustainable growth. It's just not growth, but sustainable. And for us, sustainability is to speak about communities, the sustainable growth that is happening in communities, not the extraction that happens and leaves the environment in a bad space, but also leaves the community no way richer than they've been. So that's where we are now.
Okay, but are there currently any policies by the Zimbabwean government to ease entry into the Zimbabwean mining sector?
Well, like we have said, it's easy for doing business, but we are also being very careful because we do not just want extraction, we want value addition. And that is where the conversation is. So people that are coming in to do partnership, people that are building factories for value addition, that's what we are looking for. So those are the conversations that we are having in Zimbabwe. In fact, my deputy minister of mine was here in Zimbabwe with mining companies, and we met a lot of companies in Sweden, mining companies, but also the infrastructural companies. And that's what I'm looking for today, to facilitate for the infrastructure that can get mining to be done in a sustainable manner.
Okay. We cannot talk about Zimbabwe without talking about the tourism the tourism sector. What specifics are put in place to improve the tourism sector and increase traffic towards Zimbabwe?
Well, as you may know, we were #1 this year, #1 destination, tourist destination. So we are doing very well around that. But that does not mean that we are not going to market ourselves. We'll continue to market ourselves. We'll continue to grow that sector because it's a sector that will always be there. You can't do anything about our animals. You can't do anything about our climate. So it continues to be the best.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency.
Thank you.
Yes.
Happy Africa Day.
Thank you so much, and happy
Yes.
African Day to you too.
Thank you. Let's talk a bit about Tanzania's business opportunities. We're going to seaweed and fish. Tanzania wants to industrialize seaweed farming. Are there joint venture models with Swedish extraction and processing technology firms at the moment, or even European companies at the moment?
Okay, thank you for a good question. And I should say the seaweed farming in Tanzania is one of the leading sector now in Zanzibar, where blue economy is one of the main agenda of the government. And as we speak, the industry has grown to the extent that it has employed more than 26,000 farmers, and the majority of them are female. And as you know, the seaweed production in Tanzania is termed to be in the 10th category globally. And in that case, is one of the areas where we need more partnership from outside Tanzania. Coming to Sweden and the European in general, we have been calling for the partnership, and as we speak, the main area we are looking for partnership is for value chain addition of the production of the seaweed. And industrialization, meaning the processing industries, and the access to the market of the Europeans. We don't have the actual industries or partnership with Sweden yet in Zanzibar, but we are looking forward to partner with them in industrial capacity. And having said that, we are so ready to do the private-public partnership where the local producers are also part of the production, and the international partners comes with technology, markets, and any other business access, which will lead the industry to go further. Thank you.
Let's go into the railway corridors. The standard gauge railway is expanding. What tenders for Swedish signaling, rolling stock maintenance, or logistics hubs are upcoming?
The standard railway gauge is one of the leading area of our infrastructure in Tanzania as we speak. The SGR railway is working and it's expanding. It's going to be working up to the neighboring countries. And Sweden is one of our partners in the project, and they have been there since Lot 1 started to be constructed, and up to Lot 4 they have financing. And as we speak, 3 weeks ago, EKN and the SEK was in Tanzania to sign increasement of the financing of SGR projects. More than $2 billion has already been financed to the project, and the Swedish companies are involved, one of them being Alstom, and we are also calling for other partners to be involved in the project. And we really appreciate EKN and SEK for the support they have given to the SGR projects. But noting that they are now involved in electrification and the signaling, we call them to be involved in the locomotive production area, but also other capacity building areas which need more knowledge. As you know, Sweden is leading in the infrastructure development in Europe. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency.
Yeah.
Good afternoon. Great to be participants Africa Nordic Trade and Investment Forum taking on today on 28th and May 2026. It's important platform for strengthening and partnership promoting trade and investment opportunity and enhancing the cooperation between Africa and Nordic countries. I look forward to engage constructive dialogue and showcase Somali growing potential and opportunity.
Happy Africa Day, Mrs. Allen Sophia Asimwe.
Thank you.
Yes, you are the Deputy CEO of Trademark Africa.
Yes.
What is Trademark Africa all about?
Trademark Africa is really trade and markets. It was started in 2010 to support African governments and businesses to reduce the time and cost of doing business. What do I mean by time and costs? A lot of the costs we see in these finished products we wear, in the factory imports, in all the commodities that are transported along the corridors, including the exports, is due to transport and logistics related barriers, but also the delays at borders, the non-connectivity of systems like customs systems. And so you find that a lot of time was spent transporting goods from markets to export and from import to countries that needed them. So Trademark Africa came and reduced the barriers, but we have increasingly moved into regional value chains, looking at fish value chain for Africa. It's a livelihood issue. We're also looking at the grain value chain. We are working a lot with very many grain sectors, and we're also working closely on horticulture and very many other areas.
As Deputy CEO, you are helping shape a continental trade integration. What's one misconception people still have about the African continental free trade area that you like to clear up?
So there are two issues there. The Africa Continental Free Trade Area is really a framework. It's more than a framework. It's an opportunity for Africa to finally catalyze trade with itself, moving us from 15% to at least 30, 40, 50%. If you look at Europe trading with itself. So it's not just about trade, it's also supposed to catalyze industrial development. So that's one thing about AFCFTA. It's not just about trade. Trade will be a critical pathway for structural transformation of our economies. The second one that I've seen is the whole issue of risk and perceived or real risk around trading in Africa. I think through the AFCFTA we can demystify this, but we need our governments to remove the non-tariff barriers that hamper intra-African trade and also hamper trade with the other parts of the world, so that trade can become a reality. As I keep saying, 50% of our GDPs is tied up in trade, especially for sub-Saharan Africa. So trade is critical for the survival of these economies.
Do you have specific backing from different countries? Tell us about these countries that are backing your organization, the Trademark Africa.
So Trademark Africa is a not-for-profit organization. We are the largest aid for trade organization. We have around 13 active partners. We have bilateral donors, like many of the Nordic countries are all our partners. Norway, Sweden, Finland, Denmark. We have the other European governments like France. We have the UK. We have multilateral agencies like and commissions like the European Commission is one of our biggest funders. We are dealing with many, and we're also working with philanthropics like MasterCard and Gates Foundation. So we have a basket, what we call a basket of funding, but we have also set up a commercial body called Trade Catalyst Africa that's looking at galvanizing commercial capital in Africa.